Posted by you/throwaway accountess. Creepy Dave. I've been lurking for a while and have wanted to post this experience for quite a while, so I made a throwaway account for obvious reasons. I grew up in a very small rural town in Michigan. This place was so small that everyone knew everyone. My high school graduating class consisted of less than 30 people. It was a place very small population-wise, but geographically wasn't small at all and consisted mostly of wooded areas and open fields. Houses were pretty spread out, and nothing like what you would see in the city. The nearest city was hours away. I lived on a dead-end gravel road. My neighbors at the very end of the road, to my left, were about a 5-minute walk. You could just barely see the neighbor's house through the sparse tree line between the properties. To the right was another neighbor, my aunt and uncle and my favorite cousin. They too were about a 5-minute walk, and I could only see their house if I walked to the end of my driveway. My house was the second to last house on the road, and just before my house was a really long driveway. I suppose you could call it another road, but it led directly to a house behind mine that belonged to a man I'll call Dave. A large open field, followed by another sparse tree line, separated my house from Dave behind us, but I could still easily see his small home perched on top of a tiny hill in the distance. I loved growing up there. It was my favorite place in the world. My mom and dad worked in town, and my older brother, my younger sister, and I were always left to our own devices growing up. We were always playing outside. My siblings and I were all born within the first half of the 90s, so we grew up during a time that there weren't really cell phones. We didn't have cable TV, just a few channels we got with an antenna, and our parents usually kicked us out of the house from sunrise to sunset because they didn't want us being stuck indoors. Because of this, we often explored the land around the area. Being 90s babies, our parents for some reason trusted us to literally let us wander all over the place and never once check up on us. The house behind us was always extremely creepy. We rarely saw anyone come or go. And believe me, we were very nosy and would know if someone was driving down the road. My upstairs bedroom window overlooked the front of the house, and my sister's upstairs window overlooked the back of the house. We also had a giant set of sliding glass doors at the back of our house that opened up to the back porch. They were so big it practically took up the whole wall, so we literally saw everything. Despite the neighbor behind us rarely being seen going anywhere, or seeing anyone show up there, we just knew he was creepy. We used to call him Creepy Dave, and still do to this day, including my parents. I can't really explain why we started calling him that, but it seemed fitting. We used to walk through the field and along the tree line towards Dave's house. We were careful not to walk all the way up the driveway and would play down in the tree line and the fields around the area. The fields were owned by a local farm, family friends of my parents, so we weren't exactly trespassing onto Dave's property if we stayed down just far enough. Sometimes we got a little brave and creeped up the road more. I remember inside the ditches leading up his driveway there would be animal bones, fully intact animal skeletons, and even a deer skull. It had all been there long enough to be pure bone. That alone was creepy enough for young kids to see. When I was in middle school, Dave married this woman. I can't for the life of me remember her name, but she had 2 children, a daughter I'll call Lisa and a son I'll call Dustin. They started to ride the bus with me and my siblings to school, and I always hated it because the bus drove up the eerie driveway to their house. I remember one morning during the winter the bus got stuck in the driveway from the snow. The bus driver had to try to shovel us out, and while everyone was stuck waiting on the bus with the heat blasting, I happened to look out the window at the barn near the house. It was still dark out, but just starting to turn to dawn, so the sky was the bluish-blackish color that makes it sorta dark, but you can see silhouettes. I kid you not, standing on the second level of the barn in the hayloft was Creepy Dave holding a pitchfork. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there watching. All I could see was his outline. It frightened me so much I turned my whole body away from the window and tears started to form in my eyes. My best friend sitting next to me asked what was wrong and I couldn't tell her until we got to school. I don't know what it was about that, but it scared me so badly. I don't know if anyone else saw him standing up there, but even now I can still picture it. That was the last time I actually saw Dave for myself, but unfortunately he didn't fully disappear from our lives. I used to stay up late in middle school watching movies and reading. I've always been a night owl, and sometimes my sister and I would stay up on the weekends all night in the living room cuddled up with blankets on the couches. One night it was very late, after 3 a.m. and my sister had fallen asleep but I was still awake. All of a sudden we heard loud pounding coming from the door that led to our garage. We had a huge bay window in the living room and a front door to the right of it. Our garage was to the left. Our window faced the driveway and we had multiple dogs, so whoever this was came from behind the house and went into our garage so that even our dogs weren't alerted. I was so scared. My sister started to cry. I started screaming for my dad and he came running out of the bedroom in his underwear holding a shotgun. He went to the door and it was Dave's wife. She was crying hysterically. I have no idea what happened and my dad never told me, but the cops showed up. Over time this same situation happened a few more times. It got to the point where my sister and I stopped sleeping in the living room for little slumber parties and eventually one night my dad told Dave's wife she needed to stop coming to our house for help and needed to go to one of the other neighbors. Thinking back, I feel kind of bad but my dad was worried for his family and had 3 children to protect. These occurrences stopped for a while until one morning I walked downstairs to SWAT vans parked down the road. Men in uniforms with vests and guns crouching in the backyard and in the field towards Dave's house. I freaked out. I ran into the living room and in the front entranceway my dad was standing with the sheriff. The sheriff had been telling my dad that during the night Dave held his wife and her daughter hostage at gunpoint. I'm not sure where her son was, but he hadn't been there. Eventually this man in his drunken fit of rage blacked out and then passed out and the wife and daughter escaped. I'm still not sure which neighbor they went to, but the cops were called. Upon getting there, he shot at them and that's when SWAT was called in to help them. I supposed sneaking through my yard and across the field through the trees was their idea of the element of surprise, but fuck, how is a young girl supposed to know what the hell is going on when she walks down the stairs and the first thing she sees out the back glass doors is men with guns in tactical gear? Dave went to prison and I have no idea what's become of him since, nor his family. The kids never came back to school. He's out of prison now, but he never came back. All I know is his creepy house up on the hill has been abandoned for ages, and I will never answer my door to a stranger pounding on it during the middle of the night. Sorry, try the next house over. Posted by you/doodlefawn. Strange men sat in my driveway and wouldn't get out despite wanting to speak to me. I live in my parents' home, as I am at the end of my senior year. This probably isn't as intense as other stories but it certainly had me freaked out. This story happened about 4 days ago. My family lives on a farm, so we have a large amount of land, and we're straight off a state road with a horseshoe-shaped driveway. We had a dump trailer that sits in our yard, just because we don't have anywhere else to put it. Due to this whole self-quarantine thing, I'm home with my younger brother. I hear honking outside, and out the window, I can just see a white vehicle. And I'm sitting there, and the vehicle is just honking as if they were waiting for someone to come out. This made me very uncomfortable, the fact someone decided to sit there and honk, and didn't want to go and even look for fear of possibly being seen. But of course, younger siblings being as they are, was quite oblivious to how creepy this actually was and decided to walk up to the door in plain sight of the strangers in the vehicle. Me, not feeling safe with just sitting there and letting my brother talk to strangers who were sitting in the driveway, finally got up to talk to them. I was very uncomfortable with it all, not in a way that was I don't want to get sick and more of a there is a stranger who is honking at my door. In some hindsight, you could say this might have been about the whole virus in some regards but other factors do play in. There were two men in this white truck, and the one who spoke to me was in the passenger's seat. The driver seemed quite nervous. Every time I refused to give any information, he ended up starting the vehicle, and his friend had to keep insisting to keep talking, which led to him in this cycle of turning his truck on and off again. The first thing I take note of is this guy had a very heavy accent which I still can't pin. The best guesstimation I have is something European. He's asking about the dump trailer in my yard, if it's for sale, which I say no, it is not. He asks if someone else is home that he could talk to. I didn't hear exactly who he wanted since his friend had turned the engine on again. My best guess is either a husband or my father, as he kept talking about tell him, have him call. Well, I'm not married and my father was at work, so I said no, and if he really wanted to see someone he'd have to come back at a later time. Then he insisted on giving his number. Still refusing to leave the vehicle, while I was saying no, there's no point in getting his number, the trailer isn't for sale, and anyone else in my household would echo the exact same thing. But he insists I get a paper or something to write down his number. He has me come close to write down this number, where I notice the next thing, his number. His area code was a Massachusetts number, we were in Pennsylvania. Now, he has me get close, right up to the window, which completely throws the whole distance thing out. They just didn't want to get out of the vehicle. Which is what really made me uncomfortable. I was too afraid to go back into my house. I didn't truly want to irritate these people and turn my back by refusing. So, I just followed what they asked to get them the hell out of my driveway ASAP. I told my parents all this once I had gotten home, gave them the number, which they didn't call because it all seemed too suspicious. My dad decided to pull out a gun for me to keep nearby just in case someone broke in because of this encounter. As my father said when I told him why they said they stopped, if that trailer was for sale there would be a for sale sign.